All right, here we go. Episode 3 of DDSN Radio. Let's go ahead and talk some college basketball. We had a huge week last week with some big matchups, a lot of SEC against ACC matchups. And to kick things off, I want to go over my top 24 in college basketball, our rankings that I just came up with today, and I'll be posting right after this video. And I want to go over it from the bottom all the way to the top and discuss these teams and what we learned the past couple, or the past week rather, and some weeks before that. So right now, starting off at number 24, I have UCLA. I still think UCLA is a really good team. They haven't had a big matchup since their trip in Maui. So they still have their two losses. One was against Marquette, the other was to Gonzaga. Two teams that we have ranked in the 24 pack as well in the top 15. And Marquette is, some people think they're the best team, or one of the best teams in the country, rather. So I have UCLA at 24. I still think they're a strong team. They're very young, but hopefully we get some more, at least more chances to watch them on TV so that people can take a look at them. But I like this UCLA team. I have them in at number 24. Number 23, the Duke Blue Devils. Duke slipped up twice this week. At the beginning of the week at Arkansas, Arkansas played a great game. They out rebounded the Blue Devils, and they also blocked 10 of their shots. Blue Devils, what we talked about on our handicaps on our website before the game is we were all over Arkansas. I thought they were going to win the game outright, coming off a bad stretch in Battle for Atlantis tournament. I thought Arkansas would be ready, and the Bud Walton Arena was packed. Arkansas played their best game of the season. Okay, so Duke's problem is they're not a tough team. They've got all the blue chippers, all talent in the world, but they're not tough. What Arkansas did is what I imagined they would do, and they did it exactly how I thought the game would play out. They out rebounded the Blue Devils, blocked their shots, bullied them inside, and they made some 3 pointers, and they're able to win the game rather easily. Duke made it pretty interesting at the end. And then I think this was Saturday. Duke lost to Georgia Tech on the road. So two pretty bad losses. Arkansas lost. I expected. I thought they'd do better against Georgia Tech. But that's why the Blue Devils have slipped quite a bit in the rankings here. Number 22, we have the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin's coming off a huge home win against Marquette. They beat them pretty easily. I like the Wisconsin Badgers, but they also lost early in the season to Tennessee. They dominated Virginia. So I don't know how good this Wisconsin team is just yet. They're heading into Big 12 or Big 10 action starting today. They play against Michigan State rather, on the road. So we'll see how the Badgers fare, which could be a huge letdown spot for them. That's why I still have them here at 22, because I don't see them beating Michigan State on the road tonight, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, number 21, Tennessee Volunteers. I like this Tennessee team, and earlier in the week they lost to North Carolina. They were getting killed by North Carolina. They made it interesting at the end, but let's be honest, Tennessee got killed. And what Tennessee struggles with, and we talk about it almost weekly, is when their offense needs a bucket. It could be tough. They do have neck connect, however he pronounces his last name. I've heard it multiple ways. It must be connect, because they drove that home during the North Carolina game. So he's the one. He's their go-to scorer. They still have Zakai Ziegler. He's been pretty good coming off of his ACL injury. But when the going gets tough, who's going to score for this Volunteers team? That's my biggest gripe with them. Other than that, defense looks good. Rebounding's there. Hopefully the scoring can gel by the time SEC play gets around for them. But they're at 2021. And here's another team, number 20, the Miami Hurricanes, who I didn't think at the beginning of the season was going to be that good, but they impressed, especially in the early season tournaments. Uh, that was until they ran into a buzzsaw against Kentucky in the first earlier in this week. Their first road game. Oh, Kentucky just destroyed them. Miami was in the game in the first half. I want to say at half they went to a 4-point game. It was pretty close, but same old story with the Hurricanes. If the 3-pointer ain't falling, they're going to struggle. And that's what happened. They turned the ball over multiple times against Kentucky's defense, and Kentucky took advantage. And in Miami's defense, Kentucky couldn't miss. They were shooting, they literally couldn't miss. I think they must have shot over 60 something percent the majority of the game. Kentucky was on fire. Miami had no chance in that game towards the or in the second half. That's why they've slid down this far. I'm not too sure how good this Miami team is yet. Maybe they were untested at the beginning of the year, but again, ACC ACC time's coming up, and we'll find out how good this Hurricanes team is. But I was not impressed with the way the Kentucky second half went, especially their turnovers. And at number 19, we have San Diego State. San Diego State's been pretty good all season. I think their one loss is to BYU, our number 16 team. Mountain West time is coming up pretty soon for them. So we'll see how good San Diego State really is. Number 18, Clemson. Clemson's undefeated. They have a big game this week. I believe it's tomorrow against at South Carolina rivalry. I believe the Gamecocks are also undefeated. So we should have a good game there. I watched the Clemson Pitt game on Sunday, or I think it was Saturday. I think it was Saturday. No, it was Sunday. It was Sunday. And Joe Girard, huge pickup for Clemson, a 3-point shooting point guard. And Clemson's a good rebounding team, good rebounding defensive team, and they beat Pitt on the road, which is a really good win for them. And they keep their undefeated streak going into battle against the Gamecocks. Can't wait to see how that game goes. I don't know what the spread is. I haven't looked at it. I'm sure there's one up, but I just haven't looked. And I think they're very deserving of 18th spot here until they play South Carolina, and then we'll find out how good South Carolina is as well. And I'm just impressed with this team so far in the season. Number 17, Creighton Blue Jays. We had Creighton unranked last week, and now they zoom back up into the rankings. This Creighton team is, I don't think they're better than last year. If Arthur Kaluma stayed, Nemhard stayed, I think this team would be one of the best in the country. But they left, and they picked up, I forget his last name. I'm pretty sure he was a transfer from Utah State. Really good point guard, 3-point shooting. This team's playing defense, rebounding, and of course, sharpshooters all around. But same story with Creighton. If they get cold from 3-point line, they usually don't win. But this past week, they were red hot. And I think they shot 60% against Oklahoma State and 60% against Nebraska last night. So when they're hitting their threes, it's hard to beat this Creighton team. And that's why they jumped up this far, because their offense looks humming, getting ready to head into Big East play. Number 16, BYU. BYU's in about the same spot as they were last week. They really didn't have any big games this past week, so they pretty much stand pat. Gonzaga. We have Gonzaga at 15. They had a really nice win over USC this weekend. There's a neutral game, too. It was in Las Vegas, so Gonzaga showed out. They played defense, they rebounded, and they shut down the USC Trojans, which I think is a really impressive win for Gonzaga, and it's gonna hold. I think it's gonna hold some weight later in the season if it comes down to seeding. So great win from Gonzaga again. This team, that'll probably be the last time they're tested this year. They don't play BYU anymore in conference, and we kind of talked about it last week, where this Gonzaga team, if they really want to be taken seriously in the NCAA tournament and beyond, they're going to need to join a new conference. The Pac-12 is no longer there. I think the Big 12 as a basketball and a baseball school, and I'm not sure what other sports they play at the D1 level, but I think they would be a great addition to the Big 12, and they need to make it happen, because as good as these Gonzaga teams are, they're untested all year, and then in the tournament when they play a tough team that is battle tested from the Big East, Big 12, SEC, they get stomped every time. So they're going to need to make a change. But until then, Gonzaga's a middle of the road team for me. We'll have to see what they do later on in the season. But again, they won't be tested anymore. They have good early wins against a very young UCLA team and a very young USC team. I don't know if it'll carry that weight, I'm thinking. But like I said, this Gonzaga team will probably be even keel the rest of the way without really having any tough tests coming down. Number 14, Colorado State Rams. One of the best teams, I believe, in the country. They're they play great defense, they rebound, and they shoot the three-pointer. They're in a back and forth game. They got tested against a big time school in Washington Huskies, who I think they're a pretty good team. They beat Xavier earlier in the year. Washington's not going to be better than USC, UCLA. I don't believe so, but they're still a pretty strong squad. And on a neutral, Colorado State beat them, and it was tight. It was a tight game all around. But this Colorado State team is pretty strong, and I'm ready to watch them going into Mountain West Conference play. Number 13, the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma didn't really have any tests this past week, But today or tonight rather, they play Providence Friars in what I think should be a really good game. I think that the Sooners, this is going to be their coming out party because the last time they played, I believe it was on a Saturday against USC, and not many people watched that game. It was during football, so it was either Friday or Saturday. It was during college football rivalry week, so I don't believe a lot of people, basketball fans, really saw what this Oklahoma Sooner team can do. They dominated Iowa and they dominated USC by the end of the game. So I think in a home game against Providence, who lacks the scoring and shooting abilities that Oklahoma has, I think Oklahoma's going to take care of business. And what I think is their coming out party tonight, which should be I don't know about prime time because we have the Jimmy V Classic, some games in the Madison Square Garden, so it'll definitely be on TV though, and I'll definitely be watching. Number 12, Texas A&M Aggies. The Aggies didn't really face much of a test this week, and they're still trying to get healthy from their tournament play. But I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I'm ready to watch them in SEC play to see how this defense and their offense looks. These injuries for the Aggies have been a blessing in disguise because a lot of their bench role players are getting a lot more playing time than probably they would have if these injuries never came up. So I think that that's going to help season and toughen this Texas A&M bench, and Buzz Williams will be able to go to at least like eight players, nine if he needs to, down the stretch of play this season. So I think that's a good thing, and they proved themselves in those couple games in the tournament. So I'm really high on this A&M team. That's why they're coming in here at number 12. Number 11, the Texas Longhorns. Texas is flying under the radar, kind of surprisingly, but they are. They still don't have Dylan Disu back. He's still trying to get healthy. They're gonna slow roll him. I'm not too sure the timetable on it, but he'll be back soon enough. One of the players I've been most impressed with this season is Dylan Mitchell of UT. He came back after his freshman season, didn't want to go into the draft, which I thought was smart. I didn't want him to become one of those. I don't even want to. I didn't want him to go to the NBA because he didn't really know how to play basketball. In my opinion, he didn't really know how to play basketball. He was just like a rebounder, dunker, and you could tell it on the floor. Like he wasn't really engaged in the offense. Totally, completely different player this season. Dylan Mitchell is all over the place. You see him setting up alley oops. You see him setting up his teammates. He's developed a 3-point shot, a jump shot. It looks a little crooked, left-handed shot, not my favorite, but he's been one of the best players for the Longhorns this year. And whenever they have Shedrick out, or whenever Shedrick was out, he had to take command of the offense, especially in the Yukon game. He was so impressive in that Yukon game. I mean, this guy is light years ahead of where he was last season at this time. So the sky's the limit for Dylan Mitchell. He's playing like a top 10 player in my opinion in college basketball. And we'll get to see him again. I want to say later on this week. I don't know if they play tomorrow or not, but they'll play Marquette Golden Eagles, and that should be a battle. Also, Max Avis, one of the best point guards in the country. Yes, he's a little seasoned, but he's playing top notch. And you also have the center Shedrick, and the freshmen are kind of continuing or starting to gel. And again, Texas defense first, let the offense come. So Texas, their problem has always been what do we do when we get in trouble on offense? I think if they figure that out, and if some of the younger guys step up as go-to scorers, I think that'll be huge for Texas because Amos, he's going to be undersized in the Big 12. We know that, so it's gonna be tough. He's going to need some help, definitely down the stretch and going into the postseason. Amos is going to need some help on the offensive side of the ball, but I think with Shedrick inside the paint, Dylan Mitchell as a versatile wing, and you have Amos. And the freshmen coming together. I really like this Texas team. They're flying under the radar for me. They're coming in at number 11. Number 10, Kentucky Wildcats. The only reason why Kentucky's this far down is because they lost at home to, I believe, UNC Wilmington after destroying Miami. Typical letdown spot. I get that. But this Kentucky team, my goodness, I haven't seen. I knew Kentucky was going to be, and we talked about it before the season started. I thought Kentucky was going to have a really good team, but I did not expect them to be that gelled together this early in the season, which is going to be great for them. So the only reason why Kentucky slipped this far down is because of that home loss on Saturday. But other than that, Kentucky is one of the best teams in the country. I just bumped them down because of that loss, but I would put them above, Purdue, Marquette, any day. And I believe they're going to be one of the top 5 teams in the country, which shouldn't be surprising because with all the NBA talent that they have, they're gelling faster than normal. So this Kentucky team is gonna be good. But I put them at 10 for now. Let's see how they do this week and how the rest of these teams fare in some big matchups this week. But Kentucky, you can put them up against any team in the country, and they'll be right there with them. Okay. Um, Number 9, that Florida Atlantic Owls. You may say, "Oh, this is a pretty big ranking for Florida Atlantic." Yeah, but night in and night out, just like some of these other teams, they lost a home game to Bryant. A lot of these teams, we just talked about Kentucky. Just because these teams have lost a game like that early in the season doesn't mean they're not going to be good or aren't good. Florida Atlantic is a very good team inside with Golden and all their guards. They're just relentless, and they've been shooting on fire. It's early in the season, and they'll be tested tonight against Illinois, which Illinois is a defensive and rebounding team. So watching them, if they struggle on offense, that's why I don't have Illinois. That's why I don't have Illinois in my top 24, because because of their offense. But if Illinois shows up tonight, then yeah, they would probably deserve it. But I don't think so. I think Florida Atlantic is gonna be the better team, the better offensive team, and they've been I wouldn't say battle tested, but they've played Butler, Texas A&M, and Virginia Tech already this season. Who I think those are pretty good wins. I don't know I think Illinois has a close loss to Marquette, and I don't think Illinois has really played anyone else besides Marquette. But that's why I have Florida Atlantic here. And then Marquette here at number 8. Marquette lost on the road to Wisconsin, rivalry game on the road, but they'll get a chance at redemption here, which should be a great game against Texas sometime this week. So we'll see how they do. And again, they're right behind Purdue. We have Purdue at 7. Purdue lost to Northwestern. Northwestern, it was a very close game all around, but same old story. If Purdue's not getting 50 free throws with Zach Edey, if they're not making 50% from three, these guys usually lose the game, right? It's always they always have to depend on 3-point shooting, like great 3-point shooting night, or getting 40 free throws. They just so dependent on like these other things happening rather than if Edie's in trouble, if Edie's not scoring, what do we do? What do we do? Well, Edie wasn't really scoring against Northwestern. What happened? They lost. And it was a close game, but they're just too dependent on those free throws and great 3-point shooting nights. And, people can be obsessed with Purdue all they want to. And Zach Edey this, Zach Edey that. Zach Edey and Purdue, they've beaten more top 50 teams in the country than who any other. Like, okay, fine, but are they a good team? Because when it comes to March, then why do they lose to St. Peter's? Why do they lose to Fleury Lee Dickinson? Because they're really not a good team, right? They're so dependent on the free throws, the 3-point shooting. So we'll see how they do, and of course, we'll keep an eye on them. They dominated Iowa yesterday, but Iowa plays no defense, so that's not much of a surprise there. Number 6, one of my favorite and one of the best teams in the country, in my opinion, North Carolina Tar Heels. They're doing this without Armando Bacot scoring the basketball. They've got some freshmen. Cadeau looks good. They brought in Harrison Ingram. He looks really good. And then you have RJ Davis playing well. And then their 3-point shooting, their snipers in the corner boys, and they're knocking down their shots. North Carolina killed Tennessee. I know Tennessee made it close at the end, but they destroyed Tennessee. Yes, it was a home game. And then they had another home game against Florida State, who Florida State was winning the majority of the game until I would say midway through the second half. And what happened was North Carolina switched to a full court press on the Seminoles, and they just destroyed them. I believe they scored 22 straight points against Florida State once they went to a press. So I think if Hubert Davis throws this press out there, randomly. Hell, if they even do that tonight against Connecticut and try it out, I don't see why not. I think that would be kind of a why not try it, right? Because if you want to go, I mean, North Carolina is a team that has the size to go pound for pound with UConn, and I'd like to see that, which we will see it tonight, right? I believe that game's at 8 o'clock. So UConn's a team that, or North Carolina's a team that can go pound for pound with UConn, and I can't wait to watch this game because it's going to be on a neutral floor. They'll be playing in Madison Square Garden, so no excuses for. I'm not saying that UConn made excuses, but no excuses for like, oh, we had to play on the road to Kansas, that's why we lost. Blah blah blah. All right, that's cool. They play Texas on a neutral. Now they're going to play North Carolina on a neutral, and we'll see what happens. I think the spread is 6, which I think is too many points in my opinion. Because think about it, an injured Texas team was or UConn against an injured Texas team was -7. Now North Carolina fully healthy is UConn's -6. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'll be backing the Tar Heels, and I like North Carolina as one of the best teams in the country if they're healthy. So yeah, I put them at number 6 here, but they could easily go anywhere from 3 to 6, and they probably will be if they could beat Connecticut tonight. Number 5, Houston, slow and steady Houston. Houston, I want to say they really haven't been tested. I think they were tested last Friday. They went on the road, beat Xavier. Xavier hasn't been very impressive this year, but it was a very hostile environment. Houston got the win, and that's all that matters. So we'll see who Houston, because that was their Big East matchup. So I don't know who they play next, but the Houston Cougars, slow and steady wins the race, and that's where Houston's at right now. And Baylor, same thing. Baylor took their tough tests earlier in the season against Florida, against Auburn. So Baylor plays Seton Hall tonight at home. Baylor should dominate Seton Hall. Seton Hall will have some size, but we've talked about this before. The Pirates struggle on the offensive side of the ball, so we'll have to see what happens there. Um, but Baylor's as good as anybody in the country right now. And UConn, we just talked about them. UConn, they're great. Number 3, they lost to Kansas. That was on the road. But again, like we said, they got the real test tonight to really gauge where UConn's at against other top teams in the country. We know they're going to be one of the best Big East teams, but we're trying to gauge how they look against other top teams in the country. And that right there is North Carolina. So we'll see how they can do. And right now they're safe in that 3 spot. But again, this is a huge week with some big matchups. We'll have to see how these Huskies do. They were our number 1 team last week, and now they dropped to 3 after that Kansas loss. And that brings us to our number 2 team, Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas was that I'm still not that impressed with Kansas. Their best win was at home against UConn, and they did beat Tennessee, but they lost badly to Marquette early in the year. So it's hard to gauge this Jayhawks team right now. So we'll have to wait and see how the rest of their non-conference goes heading into Big 12 play. But regarding other teams in the country, I don't have them rated higher because that was a good win for Kansas nonetheless. So that's why I have them at number 2. And like I said, the majority of this top, for me, the majority of this 1 through 6, they could all be interchangeable. To be honest with you, Arizona's they again they were tested tough. They had tough tests at the beginning of the year, and they passed them. Michigan State, Duke on the road. Arizona's passed their test. They beat Duke on the road. Kansas or UConn didn't beat Kansas on the road. Okay, so that's why I think Arizona's the number 1 team in the country. Everyone else, 2 through 6, they're all interchangeable, to be honest with you. And this is going to be pretty fluid, but I like our rankings right now. We don't have a lot of mid majors because what's one of the mid majors that finally got tested last week? Liberty. They play Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic killed them. Liberty played Charleston, College of Charleston. Charleston killed them. So Liberty's one of those mid majors that who we thought was going to be a great team, they're no longer even on any radar. They're not on my radar. They got destroyed. So you have, let's see here, James Madison, Princeton really is like the 2 mid majors. But again, if you put James Madison against Duke on a neutral, who's going to win? Against UCLA, Wisconsin, Tennessee, Miami, who's going to win? Princeton probably could beat Miami, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Their athleticism may be tough against Duke, UCLA, but it'd be tough matchups. But we'll have to wait and see how they do. But this is the 20 our top 24 pack right now. I like where we're at. There's some good teams. Like I said, the teams I was most impressed with this week was North Carolina against Tennessee and Florida State, coming back almost. It had to be at least a 10-point comeback for you, North Carolina. So I was impressed with North Carolina. Kentucky, even though they lost at home to UNC Wilmington, I was still impressed with the way Kentucky looked and how they do look early on in the season. And the University of Texas is another one. And Creighton Blue Jays. Blue Jays, they lost to Colorado State badly, but since then, Creighton's been on fire, shooting 60% from the field and 3-point line against some decent opponents: Nebraska, Oklahoma State. Not the best in the country, but they're decent competition on the road. Both of them were road games, so that's why Creighton jumped up the highest. My most disappointing teams this week were Villanova. Villanova went on, they had the big, I think it's like the Big Five Classic against all the Philadelphia schools. They lost 2 games. Miami's another one. We already talked about what was disappointing about Miami, how they got destroyed by Kentucky, and then Duke was is the last team that I was unimpressed with the most. Duke got beat by Arkansas, which we expected, but then they got beat by Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech had the lead, I want to say, for the most almost the whole game. So those are our biggest fallers, and that brings me into our futures. We've talked about our future bets, and there's three that I want to add. One's a new one, and two are add-ons. It's gonna be North Carolina 30-1. I love this Tar Heels team. 30-1 is kind of ridiculous. So I think that's a great price to pick up on North Carolina. Especially if they beat UConn tonight, that number is gonna change. So UConn at 30-1. Texas again. We're gonna add Texas on again, and I didn't write it down. I think they're at 50, 55-1, and then Florida Atlantic again 40-1. So there's the add-ons, and let's go ahead and talk about the games we have tonight. So tonight's schedule is pretty good. Let me bring it up here. That way I can go over some quick handicaps on the games. Let me just pull it up here so I can get that in front of me. Okay, so 5:30 Central Time. Florida Atlantic against Illinois. This is going to be in Madison Square Garden. I like Florida Atlantic laying the points here. Again, Illinois has got one of the best defensive teams and rebounding teams in the country, but so does Florida Atlantic. And the main difference between these two is offense. And at the end of the day, if we have two good defensive teams, I want the one that can make some buckets in crunch time, and that's gonna be Florida Atlantic. So I'm gonna lay the points for Florida Atlantic in Madison Square Garden. All right, the second one is 6 o'clock Central. Providence against Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma, -5. I'm gonna lay the points with the Sooners here. I think Oklahoma is one of the best teams in the country, one of the best offensive, defensive, rebounding teams in the country. Providence has a great defense and can rebound, but Sooners at home, Sooners in their coming out party. I think this is going to be a great game for Oklahoma. I'm going to back the Sooners here. Wisconsin, Michigan State. That's one I haven't looked too much into, so I'll go ahead and skip that one. Michigan State's favored by 5.5. More than likely, it's a huge letdown spot for Wisconsin. Probably laying the points with Michigan State's best, but I'll have the handicaps up on the website later today. Villanova at Kansas State. This is a home game for the Wildcats of Kansas State. I like Kansas State here at home. Huge. You have Villanova coming off of 2 losses, so you would think, okay, they're gonna be hungry for a win, but Kansas State's still a good team, veteran team at home in the Octagon of Doom. I like K State. Another good game, 6:30, Georgia Tech against Georgia. Georgia favored by 5. I don't know. See, Georgia had a really good win. They beat Florida State on the road earlier in the week, and now they're at home. I think this might be too many points to back the Bulldogs. Even though Georgia Tech's coming off a huge win against Duke, I think it would be great to back or take the points with Georgia Tech in a rivalry game. I don't know if I'm going to play that one, but that's my thoughts on the game so far early. Another game that I like, Loyola Chicago at Tulsa. I really like this Tulsa team, especially being at home. Loyola Chicago, we know they play defense. They can rebound a little. They're a little undersized, but this Tulsa team is one of the best rebounding teams in the country, as well as one of the best defensive teams. I think this is an underlooked Tulsa side. I'm going to back the Golden Hurricanes tonight. We kind of talked about this one earlier. UConn against North Carolina. UConn laying 6. I'd rather take the 6 points with Tar Heels. North Carolina is a team that I feel like is pound for pound could match up with UConn and they could score with them. And like I said, if Hubert Davis breaks out this full court press just to switch things up, I kind of like the Tar Heels. Whether he presses or not, I like North Carolina getting 6 points. I think this number should be 4, maybe 3 points. I like UConn, but I really like this North Carolina team. That's a lot of points to lay. And like I said, Texas was they were laying 7 points with a beat up Texas team, and now they're going to lay 6 against Carolina, even though they're coming off a loss. That seems like a huge number. All right. Like I said earlier, Seton Hall against Baylor. I like Baylor to beat up on Seton Hall. Seton Hall probably has some good size, but scoring wise, for 40 minutes, they won't be able to keep up with Baylor. Baylor should be able to pull away from this one. The spread last time I saw was about 11.5. Another good late game, North Texas at Boise State. Boise State lane 4. I'm not too sure where I want to land here. Boise State's been good to us the past couple times out for the Broncos. I think they won 2 in a row for us, and we faded them twice in an early season tournament, and we won those bets. So we've been watching a lot of Boise. North Texas, same thing. We've watched a lot of them as well. What do we know about North Texas? They're one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. They play physical defense. They can press, but they fall in love with the three pointer. If the three pointer is not falling, they really don't have any other offense to go to try to get some buckets. So that's why I can't always trust North Texas for that reason. So we'll see how this line goes. It's 8 o'clock game right now. I lean Boise. Veteran squad can score multiple ways, outside, inside. That's something North Texas needs to figure out. And another late game, 8 o'clock, Indiana at Michigan. Michigan laying about 7 points. This might be too many points for Michigan to lay on the road or at home rather. Indiana, they've got some size, so they can rebound with Michigan. Michigan's not the best offensive team. They had a really good showing against Oregon on Saturday, but Oregon won on a last second 3 pointer in overtime. Indiana, I don't know about this Indiana team yet, especially when Indiana plays on the road. You really don't know which Indiana team you're going to get, but that's one I have to look into. I would only take Indiana. There's no way I would lay 7 points with Michigan, even at home. The way their offense is right now, I just can't do it. But that's a quick rundown on the games today. So I'll have this posted up, the video rather, episode 3. I appreciate y'all watching. If y'all have any comments, let me know what y'all think about the 24 pack rankings. If y'all have a favorite team or the best team that y'all think is in the country, let me know. Thoughts on tonight's game. Like I said, you could always let us know on X, Twitter, and we can go over it, talk about it. Might probably be streaming tonight on Twitch as well, but I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all next time.